I used to be really stuck with alcohol. I would drink pretty much every night, and now I rarely drink. Yeah, I never like hit this rock bottom point where I really had to stop drinking. You know, you read these books by people who tell you how to stop drinking, and their story is like, I shit myself in a gutter and I lost my kid, and all of these tales of going deep into the pit, and they got themselves out of it, so therefore you can do it. Those books never really resonated with me because I never had a real rock bottom point. I was just going to work every day, getting, having a bunch of coffee, maybe some Adderall, under a lot of stress, just have a lot to do at work. And then I'd come home and just kind of look at having a glass of wine to decompress, to, kind of forget about the day and just relax. The problem was that it was like pretty much every day. And sometimes it wasn't a glass of wine, it was more of a bottle of wine, right? And sometimes it was, when I was a little bit more health conscious, it would be vodka, which has less sugar, right? But it starts to have its own problems. But this went on for, must have been 20 years or so. I drank pretty much every night. Yeah, one day I saw myself in a picture with my kid. I looked at the picture, and even though we were like having fun, I just looked at myself in it, and I was just like 40 something, pudgy, inflamed, and I looked just kind of pathetic and domesticated. It was obvious that I wasn't taking care of myself. And when I looked at that picture, I felt like sad for myself, but also sad for my kid, because I just wanted a better role model for him. And something, I'm not saying like that day, I instantly changed my ways, but that set in motion my desire to really like fix this problem and get a handle on it. The first really productive step to get a handle on my drinking was just to decide to take 30 days off from drinking. I read somewhere that they did an experiment on some people where they took a lens with mirrors and they made it so people saw upside down. And in 30 days, their brains rewired themselves to actually start seeing right side up. And they use that as an evidence that you have to spend 30 days doing something to really trigger your brain to like rewire itself. And that made some sense to me. So I said, all right, I'm going to do this for 30 days. And when I decided to do that, I was 43 at the time. And I realized I hadn't had 30 days away from alcohol since high school. This is my experience talking. You can't just take alcohol away and leave a vacuum and expect to have good results, because heck, you can do anything for 30 days. But then after that, if you still have a vacuum, you're going to go back to having a glass of wine or a glass of vodka, right? But in those 30 days, you've got to spend a ton of time building momentum on a dream life that is way more exciting and attractive than pouring that glass of wine. And so I also, during that time, woke up every single morning, spent about 20 or 30 minutes journaling in a structured way that would create a new operating system for my brain. Thought about what my dream life should look like and how my current life didn't look like that. The type of family, friendships, health, body, wealth, adventure that I wanted to have in my dream life. And then I asked myself, like, why don't I have that? And why should I expect anything less than that from my life? So I went into journaling, setting goals, and just on repeat would write my daily 4-month and 5-year goals in this structured way that was really kind of writing the same thing every morning, but it forced me to wake up in the morning and load up this operating system into my brain. Well, it's been 5 years since I began to tackle the alcohol problem and really made it's hard to say, because it's not like I started AA and I have a sober date, but I broke the back of it in 2020, and that was 5 years ago. And since then, there's been times when, I've gone back to having a drink here or there, or going out and drinking with friends and things like that. But I've always kept my distance from it since 2020. I think it really took me 100 days of sobriety to really break the back of the habit that was drinking every single night, and to get my distance from it. From time to time, I would go back and have some wine or go out with friends, and that might become 1 or 2 nights, but then I'd push it away, right? And I'd know to keep some distance from it. And I just naturally got to a point where I just don't really try to not drink anymore. I just don't want to drink that much anymore. I poured a glass of wine for the 4th of July during the fireworks, and I went and had a sip of it, and I just like didn't want to drink that glass of wine, and I poured it out, right? I'm not saying I'll never drink again, but I'm just at a point where I just don't have a desire to have it. I was out yesterday with some friends and we were out on the water, and everyone was having a little bit, and I just was completely comfortable just saying like, I just don't feel like it today, right? And I don't declare that I'm never going to drink ever again. That just sounds like this big weighty decision where I'd have to ask myself if I'm ready to make that commitment or make that stance. And I just don't have to. I just naturally don't like drinking that much anymore. Well, from time to time, I do still crave it and want it. It does pop up, right? But since then, I've taken the steps to, I think, build enough other stuff in my life that doesn't make room for drinking. Like my fitness goals, for example. I don't want to have a weak setback, which I would get if I went out for a night drinking. I'm more excited about that than the idea of going home and pouring a glass of wine. The work I did during my first 30-day sobriety stint of journaling and thinking about the life I wanted and thinking how it ran counter to having a drinking habit was really what made the difference. If I had just quit drinking for 30 days and that's all I did, I know that I would have just gone back to drinking again and being on the same path of operating at 70% for the rest of my life. That's just what I really feel. So it involved first setting a daily habit of thinking about and journaling about in a structured way the goals that would point me in the direction of having an amazing dream life. Then every day stacking up wins. So every day doing something to build friendships, every day doing something to build my fitness, every day doing something to build my wealth, every day doing something to build my network, and every morning waking up and writing those goals down day after day made me excited and made it so that when it was evening time and I would normally pour a glass of wine and I told myself to stop, I would remind myself of those goals that I was setting and how drinking would just be a drag on everything that I was building my momentum for and building my excitement for.